We need to talk about ideas, good ones and bad ones. We need to learn stuff about the world. We need an honest, intelligent, thought-provoking, and entertaining review of what the hell happened on this planet in the last 7 days. We need to sit back and listen to the Iron Fist and the Velvet Glove.
Yes, and we are back, dear listener. The Iron Fist and the Velvet Glove, trying to overcome a range of technical difficulties. I'm Trevor, aka the Iron Fist. Over there in regional Queensland is Scott the Velvet Glove. How are you, Scott?
Good, thanks, Trevor. G'day, Joe. G'day, Trevor. G'day, listeners. I hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah. And Joe, the tech guy whose normal audio setup has failed, is now using bean cans and a length of wire or something like that. How are you, Joe?
I'm good. Evening, everyone.
Didn't sound too bad. All right. Well, we're back. We had 2 weeks off in this podcast, which is becoming a fortnightly podcast, I think, the way things are panning out. So anyway, what's on the agenda? Well, we had the Ukraine peace talks with Trump and Putin. So we're going to end up talking about, I think, sort of Ukraine a fair bit, maybe democracy in Russia and China, and because there's not a lot happening locally, unless I'm missing something, Scott. Have I missed massive things happening on the local scene?
The only minor thing is the productivity roundtable, which is the government still hasn't worked out what it's called or anything like that. They kicked the can down the road on tax reform and everything else. The only ones that seem to be actually trying to do anything are the Teal Independents. They're actually asking for the government to be bold and brave and everything else, but I just don't think they are bold and brave. So, and I was also very surprised at the Commonwealth Bank's submission to it. They actually reckon that it's time for us to have serious talk about a wealth tax and everything else, which would be a very good thing for the country to have a discussion about. And I know you're in favour of it. I'm still yet to be convinced. But it is something that we could actually have a conversation about. And I actually hope that what comes out of that is that people of the country understand that tax is not a dirty word. That tax funds the sort of country we want. Now, we've just got to look at the enormous failures about what has happened over the last 40 years, I suppose, is the experiment has been going for. And we can look at that and we can point to the failures and everything else, and we can say, well, this is what happens when government completely abrogates its responsibilities.
This is the Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan neoliberalism experiment that's been going on since the 80s.
Yeah, since the 80s. So around about 40 years or thereabouts is when we started to embrace it over here in this country. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Commonwealth Bank or Qantas should be renationalised or anything else, but no, I've lost that. We do have to have a conversation about that.
You're going from wealth tax now to nationalising
I know. It's
essential industries.
Well, I wouldn't consider the Commonwealth Bank or the National Airline to be an essential industry.
Oh, banking is.
Well, yeah, banking is, but it's covered by 4 major banks in Australia, plus you've got a few little ones as well.
Haven't they colluded?
Yes. Did you hear that, Scott?
I didn't. Haven't hear any of that.
Haven't they colluded, the banks?
No, the connection's getting lost. Hang on a second.
Okay, you can't hear us. So, we'll keep talking, and maybe you will hear us, or maybe not. So, can you hear me?
Go ahead. There was one thing I sent to you, which was the proposal that we should tax or not allow negative gearing for owner-occupied houses.
Right. Yeah.
Because this was increasing the wealth gap.
Yes.
So the people who could afford to buy a house were better off overall than the people who were renting.
Yes. Yeah.
And therefore, basically, all the gains of owning your own property should be taxed.
Yeah.
I'm thinking possibly negative gearing should be looked at before we look at that, but
Oh, these are sacred cows that we've kicked off with here, and they got no chance of getting up. Well, until a few more boomers pass away and the Murdoch empire collapses, then we might have half a chance, because those would be forces against that for sure. So, Scott's disappeared now. Hopefully he'll come back and reboot, and Joe the tech guy will work on that in the background.
he's in the green room.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, let's put him back in the front room. He does. There he is back there.
I don't know what the hell happened.
Oh, you're back with us now, Scott? Can you hear us?
Apparently, I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, all right.
No, whatever you said there, I didn't hear it, so I have to wait until tomorrow when I listen to it.
Just a major restructure of the taxation system in Australia, but yeah.
I think it's well and truly overdue. And, I honestly believe that one of the things we've actually got to do is we've got to take the candy giving aspect of the tax cuts and everything else that seem to be given by the governments every now and again, where they actually say, look at us, we've given you tax cuts, when all they've done is handed back bracket creep. So I think we've got to index our tax system. We've got to index the
thresholds.
Thresholds, that's it. You've got to index the thresholds so that everyone from millionaire to mail boy gets exactly the same amount of money.
If only it was as simple as describing the policy, outlining how it would work, stating the facts, the assumptions, giving a coherent sort of reasoning behind it, and an expected outcome. If only it was just a case of dealing with the facts and what you think the facts will be. But,
and then we didn't have vested interests launching huge advertising campaigns to sway the gullible populace into voting against their best interest.
It's just so much misinformation is
in our
society.
You just got to look at the way Tony Abbott had that victory lap over the mining tax. How he said, finally the mining tax is gone. And I thought to myself, what was so bad about it,
Yeah. So
well, also the carbon tax.
Yeah, I know.
How did that $400 a year go in your pocket?
Yeah. So let me talk about a few experiences I've had this week. A few conversations I've had. I don't know if you guys have these conversations like I do. Seemingly not, but
I don't hang around with boomers, at least not over here.
You get content from this podcast if you do, because so my first interaction was actually I've got a different audio setup and it's annoying me, this earphone. I'll try this. So I was at the Coolangatta Surf Club talking to some boomers, and it was at a function because somebody had won some award and we're sort of celebrating what she'd done. And talking to these two guys, having a lovely conversation about a whole range of different things. We've been talking for about, 7, 8, 9 minutes or something. And then the older one of the guys, who's about 80, said, and those people on the bridge, what about that, hey? How un-Australian is that? I can't believe what our society has degenerated. Like, it was way out of the blue. Like, we hadn't been in politics at all. We were talking about what we'd done for a living, kids, places we live, travel, all that sort of stuff. I did not kickstart anything on politics. And it just came out of the blue. And I let him go for about 20 seconds. And it was, the sound bites are straight out of an Andrew Bolt article. Like, I've read enough of this News Corp stuff that you just hear the talking points. And as I said, I let him go for about 20 or 30 seconds. There was another guy there. There was three of us. And I said, I'm going to stop you right there. I am 100% against what you are saying.
Did you not just say to him, so which bit of marching against fascism do you not agree with? Do you think is un-Australian?
And funnily enough, the other guy kind of was agreeing with me, saying, yeah. And then I thought, rather than arguing the merits of the protest and what they were hoping to achieve and what they represented and facts, I just said, let me guess, you read the Courier Mail every day. He said, no, I don't. I said, okay, the Australian. He said, yes. And then I said, and you watch Sky News? Yes. I said, so what you're saying is you've been totally brainwashed by the propaganda of this Murdoch media that you're consuming, and don't you realise that they have an agenda which is not to inform you, it is to mislead you into a tribal thinking that suits the interests of Rupert Murdoch.
They've been misled.
And because I thought, like, there's just no point in going into the facts. You've got to try and deal with the basic issue at heart here, which was his indoctrination through propaganda, through these sources. And you could just tell it was from these sources because of the kind of words that he was using and the catchphrases. So that was my first experience. And, you know, needless to say, the conversation stopped about the bridge at that point. We moved on to other things. And then probably the next day, walking through the shopping centre, I see my neighbour, who's another boomer, sitting down with a cup of coffee, and I thought I'll just sit down with him and just say hello for 5 minutes, chat. And he, of course, has got the Courier Mail in front of him, and we talked about one or two things for the first minute or so, and then I said, Ray, and I pointed at the newspaper, and he said, "Oh, that Albanese, he's gonna ruin us. We're in trouble with him. Oh, Jesus, it's going to be bad." And I was like, Ray, this shit that you are reading is just, again, just propaganda. I said, this is toilet paper. This is the only toilet paper you buy where the crap's already on it when you buy it. You like that line. There's absolutely no point in trying to tell him that, like the idea that Australia is going to rack and ruin because of Albanese. Like, seriously, Scott, Albanese is just more of the same, business as usual.
He's done nothing. He has done nothing. I think that the treasurer, what's his name?
Jim Chalmers.
Jim Chalmers. He's actually wants to get in and get some reform done. Yeah. But I just think to myself, Albanese is going to be holding him up.
Yeah.
And, I was listening to a podcast the other day. They described Penny Wong as the Praetorian Guard for Albanese.
Mm.
Now, that really wouldn't surprise me because they were both so lead-footed on their criticism of Israel, Mm. It really wouldn't surprise me that the two of them are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
Well, I was having a chat with some friends in the UK because they were talking about 16-year-olds being able to vote, and it's the argument against it was, 16-year-olds, their brains aren't fully formed. Why should they be voting? But the answer is they have to live with the impact of their screw-ups for much longer than the 80-year-olds do.
Yes.
And really, you should have probably a proportional vote depending on the number of years left that you have to live with the screw-up that you voted for.
Indeed. Yeah, good point, Joe. Your vote gets diminished as you're nearing the end. Yeah.
It's one of those things. I was thinking to myself that, one vote, one value is the only thing that we can actually put in there, because you then have to find out how people are voting to work out, that's only 1/4 of a vote because you've already used up 3/4 of your life.
Mm.
That type of thing. So you'd have to find out how people are actually voting before you could actually go in and actually change the outcome of that. But I don't have an issue with the 16-year-old being allowed to vote.
So is that the law now in the UK? Is it 16?
I don't know if it's the law, but certainly it's been discussed seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Keir Starmer was right. He said, these people pay tax and everything else. They work. He said they've got to actually have some say in how you do things.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a perfectly reasonable thing to say.
And from his point of view, they're probably more likely to vote for him than the Conservatives.
Exactly, which is one of those things
would
I
think.
think to myself that they're probably just putting the nail in. They're just probably putting the final nail in the coffin, because Reform UK appears to have pinched all the Conservative. Oh, shit.
You got to put another coin in the meter.
No,
Yeah,
I don't have
Scott.
to put in another coin in the meter. I'm just...
Are you in a disco there, Scott?
No, I'm not.
For those listening to the audio version, Scott's light has just started flickering as if he's in some sort of 80s disco. So let's mute him while he's doing that. Can you mute him, please, Joe, until he comes back? So my third story, which only happened this afternoon, Joe, is a very, very intelligent friend of mine, another boomer, sends me by messenger a link to a post on Facebook. And the post was by a person who's clearly an Indian meditation guru charlatan. I know this because he was, according to his Facebook page, once the personal photographer for the Bhagwan. Do you remember the Bhagwan?
No.
One of these convicted guru felons who was posting about a German lawyer who'd been jailed because the authorities, the deep state, was onto him because of his work in criticising the vaccine conspiracy and how it was a deep state conspiracy, and this guy was unfairly jailed. And again, the guy's credentials are terrible. Like he was in jail for financial fraud and other things. And I just said to my friend who sent this to me, I said, do you think this is true or suspect it's mostly true? Because the person in question and the person posting it have very dubious credentials. And my friend, who's a very smart person, said, Trevor, I've no idea, truly. It might very well be bullshit. It was sent by an old friend who has lived in Europe, blah, blah, blah. It could be bullshit. And I'm just thinking, what the fuck are you sending this to me for? About this bullshit story by this bullshit person. Would you come up to my door and just throw manure through the front door? Like, why would you send me a link like this? I just find it so
to enrage you.
It was,
and it worked.
Well, I'm not enraged. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just like at my wit's end with things. Does anybody else have these experiences? Please, in the chat room. So in the chat room, we've got, what have we got here? Let me just read it. I'll put it up somewhere else so I can see it properly. So Alison says you need an exorcist, Scott, because of what was going on with the lights. That's good. And John says you're a glutton for punishment, Trev. I think that's a glutton for punishment. So
yes.
Does anybody else have this experience where they are talking to people and they think these people are nuts and I'm just going to tell them that they've been brainwashed?
In the chronic illness group that I'm in, I sometimes see people advising other people to go off their meds because, you can control it with diet, because diet, let food be thy medicine, or whatever the usual bullshit quote is. Yeah. There's a lot of whinging about, because it's a global thing, so there's a lot of whinging about US insurance.
Yep.
And there was, during COVID, a bunch of anti-vax shit, which I argued with, not on the grounds that I was going to change the mind of the person posting the shit, but because I didn't want it to go unchallenged in the group for people who were less knowledgeable to think that they had a valid point. So I was keen to rebut it before other people were fooled by the nonsense that was being spouted.
Scott, do you get into these sorts of conversations that I fall into, or is it just me?
I don't. Up here is sort of you considered to be conservative before you even open your mouth. So they would actually have me. They'd have me labelled as a communist or something like that. They'd say, you should move back to Russia or something like that if I actually opened my mouth. So it's just is what it is.
Okay. So people say things, but you don't say anything.
I don't say anything back, except over Israel. I have actually pulled a couple of people up.
Thank you.
And the worst one was during the state election and all that sort of stuff, when this guy said to me, he says, the Jews have been living in that country for thousands of years. And I said, well, they may have had a historical link to it, but I think that what they're doing in Gaza right now is disgusting. Mm-hmm. And he then said, he says, well, they've got a right to defend themselves. Yeah, they've got a right to defend themselves. They retaliated. Have they got all the hostages back? No.
Good on you, Scott. You pushed back. Were you going to say something, Joe?
I was going to say the people who might be saying you should go to Russia actually would fit in better in Russia. Russia is now a fascist state.
Yeah, I know it's a fascist state.
It's not a communist state.
No, it's not communist. It's fascist. It's
nowhere's communist.
Say again.
There's nowhere is communist. Probably nowhere has ever actually been communist, except for the very early days after the post-revolution. But
the only really communist country in the world was the kibbutz in Israel.
Right.
Where the kibbutz, they had several kibbutzes, didn't they? And they were everything for the collective. Yeah.
In the chat room, Alison says, it amazes me that smart people I know are still sharing chainmail hoaxes and scams. Yes, you do see that. And Alison's other comment, I've made the decision to not go to any more school reunions in North Queensland for my sanity. So
I don't blame you, Alison. I live up here. I love it up here and everything else, but I've got to come down to Brisbane once a month to get my sanity.
I don't know what you're talking about. Bob Catter is perfectly rational.
No, he's a lunatic. He is an absolute nut.
Mm.
And, I just think to myself, if he does die, Robbie Katter will actually move into that seat and take it over for him.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get rid of the Katters, because they're like...
Are you saying it would be a catastrophe?
Oh yeah, Joe.
It will be a catastrophe for sure, because it's just...
Joe. Boom, boom.
It's just, that guy is a lunatic, and he consistently wins because the public actually believes that he's actually doing something. Mm. But then you talk to, I talked to a, what was his name? He was an old Queensland National Party man that was in the Senate. And I talked to one of his staffers and everything else, and she said, yeah, but whenever they want anything done, they actually get onto the phone to them to actually do something,
Right. Mm. Yeah. Alison,
yes,
again.
And
Alison.
Yes,
I did like Bob Katter refusing to swear allegiance to the King at the opening of Parliament.
And I agree wholeheartedly with him. And he's also said something very sane and everything else when they're talking about the new money. And he said, for God's sake, we're a country that's been around for a couple of 100 years. Surely we could find someone more relevant to us to be printed on our coins. And I thought to myself, yep, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who wants to see Charles' ugly mug on the back of our coins anyway? And then you just got to change him once he dies and then get William on the back of it. It's just a bloody joke.
Also in the chat room, John, sadly, smart people are often only smart in their area of interest. True. That could be the case. So yeah. So that were my those were my observations from my week. In the chat room, I'm keen to know if you get into the same sort of... See, I don't get into arguments anymore. I just sort of make that point to people, I think. So I know it's hopeless to think you can change minds. So, but point out that I don't agree, rather than sort of nodding and letting the comment go. I have to.
I remember a Christian friend of mine talking to me about the Barbie film when it came out, and saying I went to see it and I really enjoyed it. But then Sky News was saying all these things about it, and I really didn't think it was that bad. And I went, well, maybe the problem is Sky News.
Did Sky News actually say something about the Barbie film? Did they?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
Lots of conservative media did. They were very upset about how woke it was.
And because was Ken made out to be an idiot, was he? Like a
No, Ken actually sang a song where he says, "I'm just Ken. Anywhere else, I'd be a 10." You know,
Right,
and
okay.
I just thought to myself, yeah, he was lamenting the fact that he couldn't get Barbie to notice him.
Yep.
And he said, you know, anywhere else, where I see love, she sees a friend. You know, what am I supposed to do? And I'll sleep alone tonight. You know, and that type of thing. I thought to myself, that was a beautiful song. But you know, like you said, the anti-woke brigade and everything else will be actually tearing Ken a new one, which is just a ridiculous thing. You know, it was a great movie. You know, I went and saw it at the cinema and I loved it.
It was pointing out a lot of misogyny and a lot of
Oh, absolutely it was. You know, like, you know, Barbie went into the real world and she went over to Mattel and she said, I'd like to speak to the CEO. And they said, I'm sorry, he's in a meeting. And he says, oh, well, can I speak to your CFO? I said, I'm sorry, he's in the same meeting. And he says, well, are there any women in the management? And they said to her, no, there isn't. I just thought to myself, you know, it is very, very true that when you look at our boards and everything else, most of them are men. Now, it's just one of those things. Now, I honestly believe that the big mistake in this country is that, now you can call me a disgruntled Generation X if you want to, but
okay.
they seem to be, the boomers have hung on too long in their positions. And they're jumping a generation. They aren't employing the Generation X. They're going to Generation Y, which is going to be a disaster because they haven't actually learned. They haven't actually...
Those damn millennials.
No,
how old is Generation Y? What,
I don't know,
millennials.
but they're the millennials.
what's that?
Yeah.
What age group are we talking
They came
about?
of age during the millennium, so they were born in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, they're born in the 1980s or thereabouts.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I just think to myself that it will be a disaster because you are going and you are completely ignoring the corporate history and everything else that has been made up over these years, and you're going to go jump that generation. You're going to grab someone else that doesn't have grey hair. You're going to put them in a job that they're not ready for. And the Generation X is getting pissed off and that sort of stuff. They're looking at their superannuation balances. They're realising they're quite substantial, so they're just leaving.
So somebody's got to be like in their mid-40s, 50s in order to know something, do they?
They have to be in their 50s, I think, to really understand where things are going.
For what sort of job are we talking about? Like CEO, or are we talking like middle management here?
Like, yeah, like the CFO, CEO, COO roles.
Okay, all right.
It's just one of those things. It's one of the things I have noticed is that they seem to be jumping over the generations. They seem to be ignoring Generation X, and they're going to the millennials.
Okay, well, I'd like to see some. Okay, I'd like to see some facts about that one.
And I've got no idea where you'd find them.
Yes, the age, you know, are there CEOs, CFOs in this category? I don't know that there are. But anyway, we'll see. So,
we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. In the chat room, James says the real question is who is still using coins? Yeah.
Well, no one's using coins.
Who's using notes?
You've got to use coins to open up the battery compartments on a number of things.
I can't. I never use cash these days. It feels really dirty to use cash. Like you sort of feel like you've got to wash your hands afterwards.
But hang on, you can't slip a credit card in a hooker's stripper's garter belt.
You can't. And And John says, do they have to be indoctrinated before getting a good job, Scott? Yeah.
I don't understand where that's coming from.
I think you're sounding a bit bitter there, Scott.
I am very bitter. There is absolutely no doubt about that, because two of these jobs up here didn't work because two boomers wouldn't get out of the way.
Yeah.
Well, you know the answer to that, don't you?
Kill them?
Yeah.
Right.
It's one of those things. I just think to myself that when I was at university, when I first heard about the ageing population, I actually said to a group of my friends, I said, these boomers are going to have to disappear. And they all looked at me.
You said that at university, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you could see the demographic problem that Australia was facing.
Oh, yes, I could. I was one of the very early adopters of that because it was coming.
Right.
And they'd known about it for 30-odd years, but they're only just starting to talk about it when was I at university? In the late 80s. No, I was in the 90s.
You were an early boomer basher, Scott.
I was a very early boomer basher,
Did you encourage your parents to stop smoking?
Well, my parents never smoked.
See, I think there's a whole generation of us that nagged our parents into stopping smoking, and that was obviously a mistake.
I would never have dreamt of telling my parents what to do with smoking or whatever.
So.
By the way, my dad stopped smoking when a packet of cigarettes went up to $1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, that is outrageous. And he went cold turkey from that day onwards. So, yeah.
It's one of those things. I don't know. I didn't actually wish them to die of lung cancer or anything else, but I just thought to myself, they're going to have to go because right from word go, I thought to myself, we're going to have a problem here. And the main problem that I foresaw was that, they were talking about the biggest problem was that you're going to have an entire generation of people that are used to having everything that's given to them. They're going to qualify for an age pension, and you're going to have a much shrinking workforce. So you'd have to increase the taxes on those that were still working to pay for the old age pension. And that was my biggest concern, was that you were going to end up taxing us that were still in the workforce out of existence. However, the opposite has happened, is that the boomers won't leave their jobs and they are holding up positions that rightfully belong to Gen X, and they are not moving on. And so I just think to myself that they are staying in the workforce far too long, and it could end up, I think it will actually end up backfiring on the companies and everything else, because they got a group of people that don't really move with the times. And I know Generation X is also guilty of not moving with the times, because, I've got grey hair too. But at least I've still got a full head of hair anyway.
All right, change of topic.
Yes, absolutely.
The peace talks between Putin and Trump in Alaska.
Agent Krasnov.
So what's that reference again? That's what Trump is. He's an agent. He's like a Manchurian candidate.
He's a useful idiot for Putin.
Okay, well, go on. What's your view on the peace talks, Joe? Were they always doomed to be
because
useless and...
Trump vacillates. He repeats whatever somebody has last said to him as if it's the best thing ever. So, he was talking to the European leaders, which is why he was talking about being tough on Russia. He then goes and talks to Putin. So now, he hasn't put any sanctions on, and there still is no ceasefire. But the good news is Zelensky and the European leaders will be meeting him again and might be able to push him a bit more. And interestingly enough, Witkoff is saying that the Russians have agreed to a something, whatever, 5, a Section 5 type agreement where the US and Europe provide a security guarantee for Ukraine, which is boots on the ground if Russia steps over the negotiated front line.
Right, but if they don't step over the front line, there's no NATO-like
Yeah, it'll be a line in the sand, basically freeze the positions where they are now. There's not legal recognition, so it's still an occupied bit of territory. But the war is frozen as is, like North Korea, or even like Cyprus, frozen conflict. And if Russia crosses that line, then Europe and America will put boots on ground.
Well, you see, what Russia wants is that Ukraine does not enter NATO.
Well, Ukraine can't enter NATO whilst there is a claim on their territory.
So that's what. So what's going to happen is Russia is going to keep the ground that it's already gained, and it's going to get an agreement that Ukraine will never be admitted to NATO. And
Ukraine doesn't care about that. What they wanted was Article 5. And they'll be getting Article 5.
Well, they wanted to be part of NATO. That's what they wanted.
Well, they wanted Article 5. They wanted protection against Russia, and they'll be granted protection against Russia.
They won't have any NATO equipment or NATO missiles.
They won't have the offensive capabilities of NATO onshore.
And if Russia steps over this new demarcation line, then troops will come in from NATO countries.
Yes.
Right. But until then, they're not there.
Like they did following the 94 agreement, where Russia and the UK and France and the US guaranteed Ukraine's sovereignty and integrity.
So, of course, the front line is moving westward.
Ever so slowly.
Yes, but inexorably, it's not moving the other way, and it's the Russian style of warfare, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
It's a traditional style.
They slaughter tens of thousands of their own men to grab a couple of kilometres.
Do they? Do they slaughter tens of thousands of Ukrainian men?
No, actually. Generally not.
So there's more Russian men dying than Ukrainian men?
About 3 to 1.
Who says?
It's the standard law of warfare. If you are the defender, you need a 3 to 1 advantage. As in, the attacker needs 3 times as many men, will take 3 times as many casualties as the defender. That's a standard given in any warfare.
What if one's better equipped than the other?
Well, Ukraine appears to be better equipped at the moment, when America isn't cutting off supplies because Trump's had a pissy fit.
Right. So you're still bullish about Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russia?
If Ukraine is given a steady supply of weapons, it will do a lot better than it has done in terms of bogging down Russian advances.
We'll see how it pans out, but in my view, it's just
the other
Russia
thing is,
marching on.
Russia's economy.
Yeah.
I don't know how much longer they can sustain this.
Because
they have superheated their economy by being on a war footing.
They seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, well, they're also. I think it's only masking that, though, Trevor, because they're making their own wine and everything else, where they used to import it from France, and now they're making their own wine, which is only going to work for so long, because eventually they're going to get pissed off with the second-rate wine and everything else. And then the other thing too is that, because they weren't even a country that used to make their own cheese, but now they've had to make their own cheese.
Yeah.
They
don't need to buy anything from America. They can get it from China, India, BRICS countries.
Yeah, I know that.
Sanctions don't hurt Russia.
Well, we'll have to wait and see about that, because I think a lot of the Russian oligarchs that have had their assets frozen would beg to differ about that. And Putin is only the Russian president, well, at the oligarch's pleasure. When the oligarchs when the oligarchs turn on him,
maybe an oligarch is only an oligarch at Putin's pleasure.
That too.
Well, it could be either way. I just think to myself,
like over the last 20 years, lots of oligarchs have disappeared.
Yes,
not many Putins.
Not many Putins have disappeared. However, it's only going to take one bullet into his head, and that'll be the end of it.
Well, I think he'll just walk too close to an open window on a skyscraper
and get pushed out, which is always a possibility.
People fall out of them a lot in Russia. So, look, from Putin's point of view, he doesn't have to give up anything. So, from his point of view, the war is going the way he wants it to. He's impervious to sanctions. He can get what he needs from China. He can sell oil to India, who then unsell it to everybody else.
India apparently have been hit with tariffs.
Because they're buying Russian oil.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how India carries on with that. Because I think they're going to be hurting.
Okay, they'll sell it to China then. They'll buy it.
I don't think China would actually. China's already probably got trade surpluses all over the planet.
The other question
they always
is,
need oil.
China is very interested in getting Manchuria back.
Which is currently occupied by Russia, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, whilst the Russians are distracted in Ukraine, it's possible that China will decide that now is the time to get back the bit of China that was lost during the Century of Humiliation.
Which is always a possibility, because the standard opinion of China and Russia during the Cold War was that China would be on America's side more than the Russian side. Now, that's turned. However, if China decided to make a play for that country and everything else, they could very well do that, and that would very much piss off Putin. But
there are certainly tensions over the border.
It doesn't surprise me.
What was that last comment? Sorry,
I said there are certainly tensions over the border between China and Russia.
What sort of tensions?
Islands in a river that there is argument as to where the border is, and apparently that has been fluid over the last year or so. There has been movement.
The border in the river has been fluid. You've done it again, Joe.
Yep. China is in the dominant position here. Russia needs China more than China needs Russia.
Absolutely. I just...
I think Putin is going to pay a heavy price for being isolated and having to rely on China.
What price is he going to pay?
In terms of land grabs and loss of face because of it.
So you think China is going to grab Manchuria from Russia?
I wouldn't say it's a huge possibility, but it's not a huge probability, but it's possible. I think if they think they can get away with it, they will do it.
Because that's what they do?
Well, no, because they, just like Taiwan is part of China, I think they think Manchuria is part of China.
Oh, really?
Manchuria always was part of China. It was just occupied by the Japanese, and the Soviet Union took it over.
We don't hear about it because it's not propped up by the Americans. So we don't hear about their designs on Manchuria. But I think you'll find that they claim Manchuria as much as they claim Taiwan.
That would actually be brilliant if that happened. No, because
opening a war on a second front. Yes.
Say again.
Opening a war on a second front.
It could well open up a war on a second front, and that is a war that Russia would lose.
Yes.
They've already bitten off more Ukraine than they can chew, and they'd be up against a much better equipped army that is nuclear armed, that wouldn't hesitate in using their more modern weapons against Russia.
What's the evidence for the supposed interest of China rising
to want to take over Manchuria? Like, what's I haven't seen anything about this.
No, neither have I.
Well, I suggest you go and look, but basically, it's part of China's humiliation during the Century of Humiliation.
Right.
That the Russians basically, when China was being beaten by the Japanese, sued for peace and basically handed over Manchuria, and they are very upset still about that.
And the Chinese saying, you should hand Manchuria back to us. It's ours.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try and find that. So, China and Manchuria for next week, because I have not heard anything about that.
I just think
Because
it's
given the
something-
number of meetings between Putin and Xi Jinping, they're best of buddies. Like, they've been seeing each other regularly for the last, X number of years, and
I
appear
think
to
it's
be great friends.
I think it's a marriage of convenience.
Mm.
And considering that China wouldn't actually like
Because
a
for both,
weak friend, then I think to myself that if Russia has bitten off more Ukraine than they can chew, then China could actually be looking for an opportunity to take back Manchuria without the loss of any lives.
look at it this way. So China is pretty much self-sufficient in a lot of things, except energy. And Russia has excess energy and wants to buy consumer goods. So there's a synergy between them where it makes sense that they can just sell to each other stuff they have. And both of them have a common enemy in the United States. Why would they create a bun fight between themselves?
Because Manchuria is full of resources, and therefore they wouldn't need to buy the energy if they had it themselves.
Right. Well, it's easier to buy it. That's why. That's why they won't want to attack Australia, because it's just easier to buy it than to conduct a war.
Yeah, but
Because
it's a war that's not going to take very long to wrap up.
Come off it. China, any war against Russia, come off it. Like, they would just look at it and go, why would we go to war with Russia to get their energy and weaken ourselves, both of us? Like, the two of them have to hold hands and work collectively against the United States, who is the declining hegemon. There's no way they would, at this point, take pot shots at each other and weaken each other and thereby allow America, which is a far bigger threat to both of them, to have an advantage. They're just going to go, you know what? We'll keep buying the energy because it's easier, and together we can work away at chipping away at America's influence and create a world order that doesn't rely on the US dollar and is a multipolar world. And in 100 years' time, we'll revisit Manchuria. But it's insane for them to be doing that. That's not on the agenda.
Oh, we'll see.
We will see. We will see. So
It's like what John 051969 said. Russia is at its limits now. Of course, it would be tempting for China to have a dig.
is Russia at its limits?
Yeah, it is.
They're actually producing more weapons and drones and that than they ever have. Like,
With a hell of a lot of imported gear.
they're producing energy. Like, for your average Russian, things are the best they've ever been.
Yeah, which is why Joe was actually talking about the economy running too hot.
Yeah, but when you say it's at its limits, like, which economy is not at its limits then? Like, you could compare it to a lot of other... You could say, well, the US economy is at its limits. You could say the Chinese economy is at its limits, or the Indian economy. Like, fundamentally, it's not at its limits. Anyway, it just makes no sense at all, and these guys are way too smart.
I didn't say it was actually... That was the first time I'd actually heard of that tonight. So I always thought to myself, it could actually happen. So that's just me.
This is a period where the second-tier countries, well, and China maybe number one tier are just banding together. That's what BRICS is all about.
Mm.
And they see that as the way to clear out America as the hegemon and create space for all of them. And they're not about to ruin that project by acquiring Manchuria on the basis that, well, that way we'll have the energy and we won't have to pay for it, when paying for it is so much easier. Just doesn't make sense at all. Doesn't make sense at all. Anyway, I mean, I've never heard any theory like that coming from anywhere. So
Okay.
yeah.
This is the first time I've heard it.
Yeah.
And it's could actually have legs.
Yeah, well, interestingly, so, the talks in Alaska, Europe was excluded. So this is a war in Europe, and the Europeans were not allowed into the negotiations. It was between Putin and Trump, the President of the United States.
Which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Well,
Well, it
he
just-
claimed it was just to set out some guidelines. It was an initial conversation, after which everyone else would get involved. But
European leaders have just capitulated on so many things. I mean, Nord Stream for one, where they allowed the Americans to blow it up and then went on buying, gas from America now, much more expensive, and without a single complaint, just capitulated. So European leadership, terrible. Just allowing America to run all over them. So what else have I got here in my notes? Let's see. Look, in the show notes for the patrons, by the way, you too, dear listener, can be a patron of this podcast. Just go to patreon.com and look up Iron Fist Velvet Glove, or just look at the show notes. There's a link there. And the way that works is you only pay per episode. So if I have a week off every now and again, or every second week, then whatever you've donated, it only happens when we produce an episode. So that's a really good way to do it, and you could do that. But I've diverted there. What was I going to say? So in the show, and the people who donate to the show get these cracking show notes, which includes an article from John Menadue blog by Kari McKern, where I've conveniently highlighted the essential parts for you, which is essentially, it's not what Russia and China are doing or what they are that is the problem for the West. It is the fact that they are big and cannot be intimidated. That is the problem for the West. And they can't be bullied around. And so this peace talks is just demonstrating it. Like, Russia has invaded Ukraine and is occupying a large section of it, and has gone to peace talks and has said to the Americans, what you've offered isn't good enough. We're going to keep going. So that's because they're big enough and strong enough and independent enough now that they can do that. And it's the same with what China's doing, is they're just so big now that they can laugh when Trump threatens them with tariffs and whatnot. And that's what is the problem for the West. It's not that these are authoritarian, aggressive regimes. It's just that they're too big to be pushed around anymore. So that's the essential part of the articles. I thought that was worth pointing out. People might disagree with me, including my two co-hosts, I guess.
No, not on China. I think that China handled the Americans perfectly well when, because they kept on ignoring Trump and he just kept on jacking up the tariffs. And then Trump had to face the reality of having empty grocery shelves.
Mm-hmm.
He actually had people in there from Walmart in the Oval Office letting him know that we will have empty grocery shelves unless you actually do a deal with China. Mm. So then after that, he went over that. He then sent emissaries and everything else to talk to Xi. Now, Xi is never going to put himself in the same position that Zelensky was put in. He's never going to expose himself to the Oval Office where he could actually be tirated by Trump. And I don't blame him, because the way Zelensky was treated, the way the South African president was treated, was nothing short of disgraceful.
Can we still hear you, Scott?
Yeah, I can still hear you. What?
Yeah. No, I just thought for a minute you dropped out. But
No, I didn't drop out.
I've got here in my notes, I'm conscious of the time, a little bit left. Just as I've been rabbiting on over recent months, there's no longer the argument that these countries, Russia and China, are communist countries, and it's the threat of communism that we must be battling against. That word's sort of been dropped out from the discourse, and now it's about authoritarian regimes, in that we in the West are in a battle for our Western liberal democracies and our free speech and our human rights. That's what's at stake here, not so much an evil communist. The language has turned from communism to authoritarianism, and the benefits of Western democracy. But when you look at things like democracy is a funny word. So there's a thing called the Democracy Perception Index 2025, annual study of how people perceive democracy, conducted by Neurodata in collaboration with the Alliance of Democracies. It's a Western group. Anyway, they look at global attitudes towards democracy across 100 countries. And 111,000 respondents from 100 countries. And this is a report that was done in April 2025. And first thing is, what do people think of as the purpose of democracy? And Scott, what would you think of is the purpose of democracy? Well, I'll give you some choices. A, improving living standards and well-being. B, being able to freely choose the government. C, protecting individual rights and freedoms. And D, promoting a fair and peaceful society. Which of those would you think is you most closely align with the thought of democracy?
What I would closely align with the thought of democracy? Well,
improving living standards and well-being?
I think because China has done that.
Being able to freely choose the government?
I think being able to freely choose the government is the only thing that you could actually put down to democracies right now, because America's not actually out there defending individual freedoms. They're just tramping all over them.
But when I think democracy, I think voting and choosing your leaders via a voting process. What about you, Joe?
Well, I think that's probably the only thing you could actually put down to
listening through that list, that's the only one that aligns with democracy just purely as democracy. The other ones may come out of it, but there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
And it's not the only form of government that will deliver that.
Yeah. Anyway, the main purpose of democracy by response, so the most popular, when they asked people in various countries, the highest response was given to improving living standards and well-being as the purpose of democracy. So places like Algeria, Angola, Argentina, Australia, Chile, China, Egypt, I'm just picking ones at random here, Greece, Guatemala, Indonesia, Ireland, Japan, Lithuania, just a wide selection of different countries, Singapore, South Africa, Spain. The people in these countries, including ours, think the main purpose of democracy is improving living standards and well-being. So if that's what people think democracy is, then that's kind of weird in my thinking. I would have thought it was being able to freely choose the government.
If you actually only counted on improving living standards and well-being, then you'd have to actually vote with the Chinese government there, because they've actually improved living standards and well-being. They've dragged hundreds of millions of people out of poverty.
Yep.
They have done that.
Yep.
But
And that's why you can't criticise Chinese people when they think they live in a democracy. So they think they're in a democracy, and they have the highest satisfaction rating of their democracy. And people go, well, how could it be a democracy? Because it doesn't have voting of the president. Well, the answer is people don't think about democracy as that necessarily. They think of it as what we've just said, improving living standards and well-being. And Chinese people go, well, we've got improved living standards and well-being. We're in a democracy, and ours is working really well. Thank you very much. And our satisfaction level's really high.
Well, I just think to myself that you've got to actually look at China and everything else, because in the last month, they have put up more solar panels than Australia has got in its entirety already. So every month they're going to do that. And they've already got half the world's wind energy and everything else over there. Yes, they're still reliant on coal right now, but I just think to myself that you're going to see that their emissions are going to peak very shortly, and then they'll start on the downward spiral. And I just think to myself that you've got to actually take your hat off to them. They've done a very good job on that.
So you get these strange situations now where Western leaders are saying we must fight against Putin and Xi Jinping because we must protect democracy and freedom of speech and things like this. And I'm going to play you a clip of Ursula von der Leyen, who was in Finland giving a speech. And she praises Finland for being a democratic country where people are free to express themselves, and saying that in Moscow, a protester would be arrested within minutes. And what happened for protesting? As she's saying that, the police are actually arresting a protester in the crowd who's sort of protesting at her. So I'll just play this clip. Hang on.
Thank you very much for receiving me. And first of all, to those who scream and yell here so loud, they can be happy that they are in a free country like Finland, where the free speech is a right, where they have not any restriction. If they would be in Moscow, they would be in jail in 2 minutes. Thank God we have a democracy. Thank God we have free speech.
If you were to protest like this in Moscow, you'd be in jail in 2 minutes. As she's saying that, the police are moving in and arresting the guy who's protesting.
Are they arresting him, or are they just kicking him out of the arena?
Well,
Is he going to be in prison for 20 years because he dared voice an opinion against?
But Joe, the point is, we have freedom of speech in Finland. Yeah. We are so lucky. You can protest. Is what she's saying. Well, you can't, because this guy is being dragged away from his protest.
Well, no, but there's a difference between protesting and disrupting a meeting or an event. You can stand outside and protest. Well, you can't come into the event.
She is saying to the protesters, if you were doing this in Russia, you would be arrested and taken to jail.
Yes, and this guy's not being arrested and taken to jail. He's being thrown out.
Well, I guess it was all fine then. I don't see there was nothing hypocritical about it at all, and it was all good. So,
well, again, freedom of speech means the government isn't going to arrest you for what you say, not that you have the right to say it wherever you want.
She's saying, pointing to the protesters who are yelling at her, saying, "You're lucky. You can do this here."
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
you're
they
going
can't.
to get disappeared for 20 years into a gulag.
She's effectively saying, you can do this here, unlike in Russia.
Yeah.
As she's doing it, they're being prevented by doing it because they're being dragged off by a policeman.
Yeah, they're being thrown out of a private event. That's fine.
Well,
They're
then
not being arrested by the
don't
government.
say you can do this here. You should say, which is what
yeah.
you were saying.
There's a difference between you're not in fear of the government. And I know this because I have friends who have protested in Russia and were very aware and very afraid. And I don't think this person was very afraid. This protester.
Yeah. I guess. Meanwhile, as well, in the UK.
Palestine action.
Yes. So.
My UK friends are very upset that they're totally ignoring the anti-immigration protesters. The police are ignoring them, whilst arresting the Palestine Action people who are merely being arrested for saying, I support Palestine Action and doing nothing more.
Holding up a sign saying, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action, and you will be arrested. And hundreds of them are.
Yes.
And, and so, just circling back, the argument that Western leaders are given that these evil authoritarian regimes who don't allow free speech, have got to be stopped. Well, they're starting to lose credibility because of their own actions in preventing free speech, as we are seeing also in Australia with Mary Kostakidis and others. So, anyway, gentlemen, that's an hour and a bit. I've got a lot of stuff I want to get out. I might do a little extra podcast because there's a great bit by Jeffrey Sachs on Putin and other stuff. Keep an eye on your podcast app, dear listeners. I've just got stuff that's sort of not great in terms of a conversation for the three of us, but it's stuff I just want to get out there. So I might throw in one just to sort of get that out there. Anyway, gentlemen, we've battled through the early technical difficulties to produce yet another wonderful hour or so of podcasting gold. Thank you. We'll be back next week with something. If we're not, it'll be 2 weeks with something. Until then, bye for now.
And it's a good night from me.
And it's a good night from him.
Good night.